The impact of something having been hurtled against the ship threw Kingston from his seat and to the ground. Ferris, the crew's pilot, was trying to bring the ship out of its violent rotation caused by the impact. At the same time, Johnson checked the systems, which had started to blink and beep, for any damage. Feeling his vision blur, Kingston tried to get up. "You okay?" Riley asked, whilst helping him up. She had sat next to him reading a book, as she had no duties for the moment. No one was hurt or sick. She was the medic as well as botanist, tasked with caring for the crew as well as oxygen and food-producing plants. "What was that?" Ferris yelled, still fighting for control. It was Johnson who answered. "Something hit us." "Is there any damage to the hull?" Captain Singh cut in. He had just entered the bridge as he had been absent for a moment. "I'm not sure yet." "Doesn't sound so bad," he exhaled in relief. But Johnson's panic only got worse. "No! The object is holding on to us." Singh's eyes grew wide. Kingston didn't know Asian eyes could grow so wide. "What is it?" The question went unanswered when Ferris finally managed to slow down the ship and regain control. "Son of a bitch," he uttered, stroking the keyboard as if the ship was his beloved horse. Johnson was still frantically opening diagrams and looking at the machinery's statistics to find any damage. His dark skin hid any potential failure he might have displayed at that moment. When he finally put the picture of the object hanging onto us to the big screen, everyone stopped breathing for a moment. As a scientist, Kingston could not suppress a shudder of excitement. The real picture was blurry, and the thermal image next to it showed only a rough outline of the object. Its 5 limbs ended in one single long claw. 3 of them seemed to have dug into the ship's metal for halt. The tail, twice as long as the rest of the body, had wrapped itself around one of the ship's side wings. The head was a kind of half-round structure with one big eye in the middle. It had no hair. The skin was dark but not black. Thin spikes ran along its spine. "What do we do, Captain?" Ferris asked, still staring at the creature, which for the moment just hung there motionlessly. Kingston could see how his captain gritted his teeth. The ship wasn't made for battle. It was made for a rescue mission. One last hope. And even if they couldn't shoot that creature out of fear that they might harm their own ship, they had to survive and fulfill their mission. They were humanity's only chance. Their mission was to set out towards the black hole which was closing in on Earth's solar system. Even if it wouldn't eat Earth at once, eating the Sun or even just one of the other planets would result in chaos for Earth. Those planets were in perfect harmony with each other. One missing would lead to terrible consequences for all the others. So the leaders of the world had agreed on a silent mission without telling the public. A suicide mission to ensure survival. The plan was to send their ship deep into the black hole's heart. The ship had been built around the center of complex mechanics which ran through the ship's structure like nerves. This concept served as a solution as well as providing energy for the ship's engine by using the dark energy of space around. They called it the entropy decreaser. Some also called it the hole evaporator. Using quantum mechanics, this creation was supposed to reduce the black hole's mass by decreasing the entropy inside it after having been swallowed. This would cause the black hole to evaporate, starving it before reaching the solar system. It wasn't a loud, sudden end. It would kill the black hole slowly and in silence. Theory and experiments had proven that it was a possible outcome by 95%. And yet, no one would know until the time would come for the black hole to devour Earth's solar system. It was only hope and the spirit of 5 people which stood firm in the face of annihilation. Their families hadn't been told of the danger or the real objective. They believed their loved ones would return in a few years, but the crew knew. They had been told and agreed to that particular end. They had also been assured that their families would be paid a large amount to set them up for life. They were safe in every way possible. and that was important. Kingston's mind returned to the task at hand when Riley suppressed a gasp. The alien creature had turned its head towards them. It wasn't looking at the camera, it was looking at them. Its one eye, almost as large as the whole head, was ranging from yellow to orange to pink and red, from the center to the rim. It only looked at them for a second before a very thin lower jaw opened like a hatch, revealing long sharp teeth. Dozens of them like an ugly deep-sea fish. It was grinning. Turning its head back to the ship, it suddenly tore into the hull with teeth and claws. At once, the system sounded the alarm as precious oxygen was sucked out of the ship. It was the side wing which contained their plans and the center of the oxygen production. Close the nearest hatch, Johnson. Protect as much of the wing as you can, Singh ordered. Sir, where are you going? Johnson asked, already logging back into the system. I'm going to torch this motherfucker. Sir, Ferris objected. We all knew there was a 10% chance to survive this encounter. It should be me. Back to your post, Ferris, Singh ordered, already on his way through the door. This ship needs its pilot. You and Johnson do whatever it takes to get that thing off. Without thinking, Kingston set off to follow his captain. By the time he caught up with Singh, he was already halfway inside his spacesuit. A fire thrower was standing next to him. You are not coming, Kingston. You are the only one who knows how to work this thing once we reach our destination. You can't go out there, sir. I can, he answered with a twinkle in his dark eyes. He was usually very composed, never showing his feelings, but at that moment he allowed the scientist to see behind his captain's mask. You see this? He motioned at the suit. This is for going out there. I'd expect more from a scientist. He kept joking, but Kingston could see the tenseness in the man's shoulders and back. Sir, go back to the bridge, Kingston. Wait until it's your turn to do what's right. But that's an order. He had his back turned to the Englishman as he yelled those words. He put on his helmet and reached for the weapon. The ship groaned from what the scientist assumed was the creature tearing into the hole so it could enter. But who's going to take command if something happens? Kingston cried desperately. The captain turned around, his body far more intimidating in a thick spacesuit. He stepped closer. He didn't speak, he only approached, causing the scientist to retreat. He didn't notice he had crossed the threshold until the hatch suddenly went down in front of him, activated from the inside by Singh. Captain! You'll figure that out as long as you don't fight between you. He finally answered through the communication device in his suit, which was connected to the ship's radio. Now go back, Kingston. It's dangerous to be scattered across the ship in such instances. Defeated but obedient, Kingston went back to the bridge. Johnson was still pressing buttons, his mind far away, lost in the ship's system. The creature was now inside the wing, only its tail was still hanging outside through the massive hole it had torn into the metal. It's trying to get through the hatch, Johnson reported. Ferris was trying to bring their attacker out of balance by moving the ship with sudden sharp turns. I got it, the captain answered over the radio. Hold the ship steady for a moment there, Ferris. The pilot stopped steering. They all watched as the astronaut walked carefully toward the large hole. The hole was at a weird angle on the side, difficult to enter for a man without claws. Carefully, Singh jumped down, holding on to the tail. Of course, the creature reacted at once, dragging the man inside. There was no sound due to the vacuum, only the glow of fire. Johnson switched to the footage, viewing the room, which was sealed off. The flames were harming it from the manner it shied away. The captain stood his ground, but the long tail had wrapped around his leg, throwing him against the wall. Stubbornly, he kept showering the thing with fire. As a result, the creature clawed its way outside again through the ceiling of the area. Clinging to the tail, the captain followed. I got it outside. Try to shake it off once I get it again, Ferris. Aye aye, Captain. Turning to its enemy, the creature showed its teeth and growled. Judging from its bearing, Singh only countered by aiming his weapon and pressing the button. The creature dodged, crawling to the downside of the ship, leaving small holes in the hull from its claws. They didn't stand a chance to shake this thing off. The captain jumped back into the wing through the top hole, probably to wait for his victim on the inside, for it had started to tear another hole from the downside. "It's behind the hatch," Johnson called out. "It's entering the plant farm." "I have to go there." Riley jumped to her feet, already running for the door. The plant farm made up 2/3 of the wing. There was one hatch dividing it in the middle. They could still save half the plants if that thing would get in there. The captain could not get it from the outside. "Johnson, you have to close the next hatch and open the first one." The African-American looked at Kingston for a second before agreeing. It was their best chance. Already the system was warning them of more damage, causing potential oxygen loss. Captain Singh, having heard the conversation, was already waiting for the hatch to open. He held on tight as the air pressure regulated for a few seconds to not be blown into space. Cautiously he walked into the segment of the wing. "Where is it, Johnson?" he asked. Johnson went back to the camera, viewing the outside of the ship. "Right beneath you, Captain." In the blink of an eye, the thing came bursting through the floor, the claw outstretched to grab the captain. Singh unleashed another storm of flames, but the creature kept going. Everything went down too quickly. Singh's leg showed blood. The thing came after him again, baring its teeth. More flames, more claws aiming for him. At one point, the cam was destroyed, bereaving them of further information. Only a minute later, the next alarm sounded. "It's at the next hatch, working through it," Johnson informed them. Ferris got to his feet. "Where are you going?" "What do you think, genius?" he replied to Kingston's question. "Get out there, finish it." "You can't. You'll be the next one we lose." "Do you want to go?" he shot back. "Oh, wait, right. You rather push panthers and hold lectures." The pilot sneered. His temper was taking over. He'd been in the army before this, and he despised people who talked whilst others died. Kingston had always been the one he had projected his anger onto, but right now wasn't about saving lives, it was about the mission, and the mission couldn't go on without a pilot. Kingston went to him, trying to keep him from leaving. Ferris shook him off in an aggressive manner, ready to get physical. "Stay down, Ferris." Both men stopped in their tracks upon hearing the captain's strained but still lively voice. "Johnson, you must close the hatch connecting the wing to the main body of the ship, and seal off the damaged part again." Captain Singh coughed a few times. He was hurt. Johnson remained silent for a moment as he tried to comprehend the reason for this odd request. "Answer me." Yes, sir." "Do it now." "No, wait." Kingston interfered, pushing Ferris aside. "I need to get Riley." Johnson cast a glance at the screen. "That thing will be through the hatch in 2 minutes. He looked at Kingston. "I have to close the hatch before that happens." Not wasting time, the scientist set off running. His lungs burning, he reached the wing. Riley was just carrying plans to the ship's main body. "We have to get out of here." He tried to convince her, but the woman refused. "No, I have to save them." Knocking and scratching noises came from the hatch far ahead. "It's on the other side. We have to go. We have to breathe." "Kingston, hurry up!" Johnson called through the radio. More scratching sounded and the sound of steel being bent. "We have to go. Now!" He just dragged Riley with him. Before they could make it, though, the creature tore through the hatch. Its large eye fixed them. With one leap it hovered over Kingston as he had pushed Riley to the side, out of harm's way. Baring its teeth, it was only inches from the scientist who lay on the ground. One of the claws dug into his shoulder as he leaned in closer. It seemed to relish this moment of making him tremble. Then, all of a sudden, it jerked to the side. Riley had found a shovel and was beating the creature with it. Once out of its grasp, Kingston got to his feet. Far behind him he saw Singh. The captain was struggling. Deep wounds marked his torso, and one shoulder was torn. They locked eyes. He held the fire thrower and had taken off his helmet. It was the moment Kingston understood. Singh wanted to fill the wing with oxygen and blow that thing to kingdom come. Running into the room, he turned up the oxygen levels to maximum. Riley, struggling to hold her ground, was hurled aside by the time he returned. Taking the shovel, he rammed it into the thing's eye as it was occupied with its new prey. It howled in pain, making Kingston's legs grow soft. Yet he dragged Riley along and made for the hedge towards safety. It was already descending. One last glance behind showed Singh sitting, turning on the fire thrower. The creature had pulled out the shovel and was aiming to follow its new victims. At once, the whole wing exploded, turning into a sea of flame, and just in time, both crew members exited by rolling through under the almost closed hedge. The alien creature crashed against the metal behind them as it was hauled against the hedge by the explosion. They just kept laying on the ground. Minutes passed without any sound from the other side. They had done it. A week had passed in which they had managed to recover 1/3 of the wing. Enough to grow plants again. The system, though, had been damaged severely. The water tank showed cracks and the system refused to water the plants. Johnson could do only so much to bring it back. The captain was dead. So was their visitor from outer space. Oxygen was sparse. They had to be careful with the resources as it would take a very long time to stabilize and refill those resources, and that was only possible in a best-case scenario. Johnson had told them that the system might fail again as he lacked proper parts to repair it. The explosion had wreaked a lot of havoc. Kingston was ripped out of his sleep when the alarm went off, blaring through the ship. By the time he entered the bridge, a swearing Ferris was already trying to make the best of the situation. Shit, 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 shit was the only thing he muttered constantly as he navigated the ship through the hail of meteors. I thought you were flying this thing, Kingston wondered with a slightly reproaching tone. I needed coffee, okay? Where's Johnson? Engine room. An unbearable heat greeted Kingston when he entered the engine room. The entropy decreaser was working hard, using the dark energy the thin, vein-like tubes gathered from the outside of the ship. It kept generating energy. The function which would decrease entropy had been turned off for the moment, as they only used it to produce energy to drive the engine. The heating, electricity, propulsion, water and air circulation depended on quantum thermodynamics. It was the heart of the ship which distributed the energy to the many different sidearms of the system. But somehow the heat wasn't being used, it just got stowed, heating up everything around. What's wrong, Johnson? Kingston called out through the thick air and the noise. The dynamo is stuttering, he called back. Following the voice, Kingston got closer. The large dynamo above the entropy decreaser refused to move smoothly. It consisted of a large core in the middle giving off a purple glow while rotating, and two rings, the gyroscopes, which moved around it. At the moment, though, nothing moved, or not as smoothly as it should. The rings stuttered in their movements. The same happened with the rotating core. I can't quite make out what happened. The meteor shower damaged something or rattled the ship, causing something in here to stop functioning. Johnson wiped the sweat from his forehead. Both went down when the ground quaked. Around them a strange noise came from somewhere, the kind of noise which caused the blood in one's veins to freeze because it meant damage. Johnson was the first to get up. Getting to the radio, he pressed the button before speaking. What's going on up there, Ferris? Bloody hazards from space, that's happening. And then after a minute he added more calmly. You better move your ass up here and take a look at the system. It doesn't shut up. Johnson struggled for a moment as he scanned the engine room around them. Alright, just a quick look. Both rushed to the bridge where the lights had gone out, causing the whole ship to be illuminated in a dim red. The air was thin too, making Kingston gasp for oxygen. Johnson looked at the ship's outer condition. What the graphics showed was more than distressing. The shields were down, the hull damaged. Their pilot was still doing his best avoiding meteors, but the stuttering system, due to the failing electricity, made the movement sudden and jerky. Kingston held on to the console to not fall. "How far to the hole?" the mechanic called to Ferris. "Under a quarter of the whole way." The reply was cooler than expected. "We won't make it with that stuttering engine." A moment of silence ruled. Another impact shook the ship. "I will go back down, try to fix the dynamo." He looked at Ferris. "You have to try and make the best of the systems as they are now." The tawny-haired man only shot his crewmate a short glance before focusing on the threat outside again. "Kingston," Johnson addressed the scientist, "you should get Riley. The ship's security system closes the hatches to seal off the badly damaged parts. We shouldn't leave the bridge." Kingston went at once, but Riley wasn't in her quarters. He found her amongst the plants. She was watering them manually. "There you are." She stopped and turned around with a questioning look on her face. "Johnson says the ship's automatic system will close off parts too damaged," he explained, and after a moment of taking several breaths in the thin air, entered the room. Another quake threw them both to the ground. Ferris was still having issues with avoiding the meteors. One of the large plants fell from one of the tables, its pot shattering on the ground. There was more quaking and the sound of metal groaning as more meteors hit the ship. With effort, Kingston got to the radio. "Ferris, what's going on?" No answer came, causing the scientist's guts to grow cold. "Ferris!" "I heard you the first time, pencil pusher," the pilot growled. He seemed in pain. "The propulsion fell out. We are floating dead through space." Kingston's heart stuttered at the revelation. "We have to get to the engine. Help Johnson," he said to Riley, who nodded at once and followed. They made their way to the engine room as quickly as possible with the low levels of breathable air. More shivers went through the ship as Ferris failed to dodge all the rocks floating around them. There was an almost slow, shrieking sound somewhere close to the corridor they were hurrying through. Then the wall suddenly gave in as a pillar in the ship's structure broke down, ripping through the metal and caught Riley. Kingston was too slow as he tried to not get hit himself. He could feel heat. Somewhere in the engine room things were not going to plan. When the dust had settled, he realized that everything was still. "Riley!" He turned to his crewmate, but her leg was stuck between crushed metal. There was no hope of getting her out on his own. She had lost consciousness as well. Her pulse was still there though, weak, but there. "I'll be back, I promise." He spoke even if she couldn't hear him before taking off. Johnson was still sweating in the engine room. The backup system illuminated the ship barely. The dynamo had seemingly died. Motionlessly it was hovering in the middle of the room. "What happened?" Kingston asked when he saw the mechanic who had just put out a fire. "Ship died. I'm working on bringing back at least the propulsion, by wiring the entropy evaporator directly to the propulsion system." After a minute he seemed to realize. "Where's Riley?" "Stuck between metal. I cannot get her out alone." Another, much more violent quake shook the ship. Kingston almost feared this to be the end and expected to find himself floating in space any minute as the ship was ripped apart. But the vessel held, granting them another try to get up and find a solution. Without hesitating, the tall mechanic came along. Kingston's heart sank as he saw that parts of the ceiling had collapsed and buried their crew member. "Riley!" Both started moving scraps of metal as they searched for the woman. "Over here!" Johnson called out from the other end, causing the scientist to nearly stumble over his own feet. He was confronted, however, with a solemn face. "We have to get her out of here." "Kingston, she's..." Johnson hesitated. She's dead. The statement hit him like a rock. No! She can't be! She was alive, I swear! Shoving his crew member aside, he kneeled down to find her pulse once again, but her skin was almost cold. Quickly he drew back his hand. She was alive, he echoed. A hand on his shoulder was his only comfort. I'm no doctor. She might have been injured somewhere, we can't look. Only reluctantly, Kingston followed when the mechanic went back to the engine. Of course, Johnson was right. They had to get going. The impacts on the ship had lessened, letting the scientists assume that for now, the danger from outside at least had passed. You should go. Check on Paris whilst I work on this. Johnson spoke when he started messing with some wires. Are you sure? I'm of more help here than on the bridge, and... Kingston didn't need to finish the sentence. It was an open secret that Ferris had a personal dislike for the scientist. Johnson grunted his agreement. Together they rewired the system, trying to exclude the dynamo which sent the electricity to the different functions. They tried to feed some of it to the machines producing oxygen, but when Johnson flipped on the switch to restart the engine, something explosive happened. The dynamo, possibly containing some rest spark of energy, glowed in a bright purple, spinning at high speed. Johnson, who stood closer than the scientist, was hit by one of the sparks. The sphere sent flying through the room before it collapsed and went dark completely. The mechanic went down immediately, but the steady hum of the propulsion had returned. At least they could move on. Are you okay? Kingston helped his friend up. There was a terrible burn from the bolt of electricity on Johnson's chest. He was breathing heavily. Let's get back up. Slowly they made their way through the halfway collapsed corridor to the bridge. Ferris turned around as soon as they entered, but his expression of celebration quickly faltered at the sight. Johnson, who could walk on his own by now, checked the systems at once. Propulsion was back, but fresh air was a problem. The system producing oxygen was running with many hiccups and faltering. It wouldn't last long. The moment the mechanic had made sure the ship was at least moving again, although with no shields, he collapsed. Kingston went to him at once, but his crew member was just lying on the ground, catatonic. The dynamo had been new and badly understood in its fundamental workings. It was highly sophisticated technology, and even Kingston couldn't say for sure what always happened. It was dangerous for sure, but it had been, once again, hope. That's what it always was. The temptation of hope. Time passed in which they got closer to their destination. Johnson's condition worsened daily. He was having a fever and his skin came off as if he had been too long in the sun. He died slowly and painfully, long after, but before the system of their oxygen broke down. Kingston had spent most of his time sitting in a corner staring at the floor. Riley's death had been a lot, but seeing Johnson suffer was even worse, and he felt guilty when he was glad to see that his friend had taken his last breath. They wrapped him into a large towel and put him next to the rubble which had buried Riley. Ferris was oddly silent and non-hostile the whole time. He flew the ship and slept, but he said nothing. They both only noticed the low oxygen levels when they became terribly sleepy, and every breath felt empty. Without Johnson, there was even less hope to fix it than with him. So they checked the oxygen bottles for the spacesuits. We won't make it, Kingston uttered in defeat. Depends on how much we breathe. I'm not an idiot, Ferris. It can't be done. Alright, let's just suffocate together then. With that, Ferris turned around and went back to steer the ship himself. Kingston had been too tired to argue and just laid down to rest a bit. When he came to himself, the thought of checking on his crew member came to him. When he entered the bridge, Ferris sat on the ground in a dark corner, his head down. Don't tell me you're fucking drunk, Kingston sighed, going closer. We don't have time. He He stopped dead when he was close enough to see the bloody stains on the other man's arms. Before the scientist could say anything more, Ferris stirred. I set the ship on autopilot. It's only a few more days for you to go. He spoke slowly, as if he was exhaling the whole time. What the hell? A piercing gaze creeped into the features of the dying man when Kingston wanted to scold him. We both cannot make it with that oxygen. Only one can. This one has to be you. I always knew you weren't quite clean. You can't just go and kill yourself. Kingston yelled, breathing heavily due to the combination of being agitated and breathing thin air. Ferris only grinned. Academics, he sneered. You never have the guts to do what's necessary. Unable to bear another death, Kingston sank to his knees next to the pilot. When Ferris heard him sob, he only turned his head with a belittling expression. Put on the damn suit, Princess. Kingston followed the command without wanting to. With the spacesuit and oxygen, he returned to the bridge. His mind was clearer now that he could breathe freely again. He looked through the monitor ahead of what was waiting for him at the ship in space. Far in the distance, he could make out a small but terribly bright dot. It was the black hole, consuming a nearby star. I can see it, Ferris. Look! Kingston turned around to see his friend's broken gaze. A puddle of dark blood had gathered beneath him. Tears formed in his eyes. He had died behind the scientist's back, just like that. Those last few days of that journey, Kingston only sat in the pilot's chair. Sometimes he would talk to the corpse in the corner, which was slowly rotting away. Although the lack of oxygen had slowed down the process of decomposition, he felt madness gnaw on his mind as he dwelled on the memories of those now dead and how they died. He would have liked to talk to Riley and Johnson too, and Captain Singh, but it felt wrong since their bodies weren't there with them. So it was Ferris who had to listen to his incoherent rambles. When the event horizon was close in front of the ship, Kingston went to the engine room to prepare the entropy evaporator for its real purpose. For that, he had to take it out of the system as power source. There was a rest of electricity for the propulsion and steering to use, but it would soon be gone. The evaporator would use the dark energy inside the black hole to do its work. His movements were slow due to the heavy spacesuit he had to wear. Kingston went back to the bridge and took a moment to stare at the cosmic giant. Unfathomable, it floated through space, marvelous and at the same time terrifying. The object came closer with every passing second. The astronaut had already crossed the event horizon, making it impossible to turn back. Suddenly, a rain of embers came from somewhere above Kingston. It was followed by the system going dark. Now he was blind. The electricity had finally given out. Turbulences made the ship shake and rattle. Its structure was groaning and screaming at every violent movement, caused by the matter swallowed by the black hole. Kingston thought of his family back home. Another turbulence made him grip the console as firmly as he could. Right in front of him, eternal and menacing, the black emptiness was greeting. He knew that even without a screen which showed what lay ahead. The scientist pictured the smiles of his loved ones in front of his mind's eye as the inevitable approached, gaping and infinite. And the thought of them being safe made him forget his fear. Like the currents of a storm, something inside the blackness shook the ship again, stronger than before. With one jerky motion, one of the ship's walls ripped open, sucking the man out into the void. Still in shock, Kingston kicked the emptiness around him as he tried to find balance and move, instead of floating helplessly. Lightning flashed in different colors, which naturally wasn't accompanied by any thunder. Yet it struck Kingston as strange that he should see but not hear anything. Pieces of metal were scattered through the empty space, and soon the scientist lost sight of everything around him in the dark. Scraps of matter passed him by, too quick to be examined. Flashes of bright, glowing yellow. A quick glance at his suit's oxygen levels told him of the rapidly dwindling resources. Just when he wondered what would happen next, a wave of sparkling mist surrounded him. Stardust in all the colors the human mind was capable of comprehending. It enveloped him completely, taking away the eerie feeling he didn't have until just now. Being filled with wonder, Kingston reached out to touch it. Like water, the sparkling dust parted and streamed over his gloved hand. Shortly after, the dust parted, leaving him floating in emptiness. But he wasn't inside the black hole anymore. He couldn't be. He was surrounded by distant stars and even galaxies. Their light seemed to be a glimmering beacon of hope. In front of him, Kingston saw a giant explosion. Bluish-green mist expanded, taking on the form of a blooming flower, before collapsing again in itself, becoming denser and denser. Ever smaller, the nebula became, turning into a bright sphere. Warmth drove away the coldness in Kingston's heart as the young star shared its light with the universe for the first time. It was the embodiment of life, filling the man with awe. Feeling a slight lightheadedness creep up on him, the astronaut knew that his time was over. But what a wonderful sight it was, the birth of a star. What did a creature as small as him matter compared to the vastness of life, the vastness of space? What fear could death hope to inspire when faced by the beauty of this radiant sphere, by the beauty of life itself? Kingston didn't know where he was, when he was, or if it was even possible for him to be there, when he had originally entered the black hole. But the knowledge of physics possessed by humanity was limited. He accepted the fact of him being right there and right then, at the end, and he knew that his mission was a success. Something deep inside him just knew. Once more he looked at the young star, reveled in its cleansing light, a light illuminating the darkest of places and granting its purity to every soul, no matter how lost. He was happy, and he was content as he closed his eyes. A thought crossed his tired mind. This must be what all the religious people imagined when they thought of heaven, ever-giving, benevolent, at the root of all creation. There's the sun.